Perfect. All right. Well, good morning and welcome to everybody. Thank you very much for joining us for this session on how to assess the efficiency of your business operations. We're going to keep it quite informal. It's going to be a nice small group from different industry sectors taking part. So if you have any questions, feel free to write in the chat, or if you're actually, it's quite a long question you want to pose, then please do also feel free to I think you can put up your hand still on Zoom. It's been a while, but I think you can put up your hand and we can actually bring you onto camera and we can kind of get you involved in the conversation as well if you want. So that's going to be pretty much how we do it. I wanted to say welcome to Jane Pallister, who will be joining us today and will be kind of leading the discussion. She is the Managing Director of Boommm Consultancy and Training. She's a business development and growth consultant. She's helped to grow course facilitator for Salford Business School and the Entrepreneur in Residence for Staffordshire University. So with a lot of experience working with SMEs in the area of operations and also beyond that, of course, as well. I work for Salford Business School. I'm the business development manager. So my role is really to develop relationships with companies. Of course, universities don't just act to support students. We are a public university, so we are also there to support the local economy, and that does also involve businesses as well. So we work very closely with other organisations such as the Greater Manchester Chamber of Commerce, other chambers of commerce as well within the Northwest, and also with the Growth Company, of course, across Greater Manchester. So we are part of that. We are part of that infrastructure for the support for businesses. So I would like to perhaps just hand the microphone over to Jane. So perhaps you'd like to introduce yourself and a little bit more about, what you do.
Thank you. Yes, I was in media for many, many years before I went into consultancy. And we were always working with businesses and marketing and how they present themselves. And then when I started my business, which was just 22 years ago, I went into business advice and consultancy. And I work a lot with businesses, getting them ready for ISO accreditation, so quality management. And a lot of that involves looking very closely at their business operation and looking at how they run their business and aligning that with the requirements of the standard. So I work on operations almost daily. In fact, I'm following this meeting with a 2-hour meeting with a cleaning specialist, deep cleaning specialist that works within hospitals. And again, that's what we're doing. We're working with them and prepping. So it's always looking at how each part of the business operates in a quality way, how it contributes, and how it adds value to the business in terms of producing the products and services that it's marketing and selling to its customer base. So it's very, very much my area, very much my area. And we pick up an awful lot of things that businesses then go on to address and actually improve. And everything is based on continuous improvement, including the basis for ISO. And that's not an ad for me, but there are 2 things that we discuss and 2 things that actually do come up on our Help to Grow, especially Module 10, Operations Management, where you can look at methods for introducing and evidencing continuous improvement. That's my little bit.
Yes, thank you, Jane, and welcome again. So perhaps before we actually get started with and we kind of get into the nitty-gritty of the conversation, perhaps I'll just explain a little bit how it's going to work this morning. So it's going to be split into kind of three mini sections. Firstly, we're going to explore a little bit more the issue around the efficiency of operations within SMEs. Then we will take a deeper dive into look at some of the solutions, as Jane has just mentioned, and some of the ways in which you can really take a look at your operations and make those really necessary changes. And then the final part, which will be the shortest part, where we will just reflect upon how the topic in discussion actually links into the Help to Grow management program as one of those kind of core 12 modules. So yeah, without further ado, perhaps I'll just mention again, because I know that a few of the people have joined us in the meantime. Feel free to include your comments in the chat, whether it's a question or not. Perhaps you just want to share something that's happened within your business. Please feel free to do that. Also, as I said, if it's a complicated question, please also feel free to raise your hand, and as we're a small group, we can welcome you onto the camera and we can broaden the discussion there. Okay, so I guess to get started, as kind of like an icebreaker question, and it's always good to reflect upon, I guess, some of the definitions before we start looking into it. But what exactly are we talking about when we refer to the efficiency of operations? What exactly does it mean?
I always like to start with a clear definition, because it's awful when you actually dive into something and then people go, well, yeah, that was all very interesting, but I didn't get the first bit. Efficiency is a measure of how productive everything within the business is. So it looks at sort of the return on investment in essentially all the inputs in the business that go together to create the outputs, which are the products and services, but creating those outputs profitably. So when we look at operations management and efficiency of operations, it's how well all the component parts of the business work: the technical stuff, the mechanical stuff, the retail stuff, the service end of it, and how well the communications and the workflow literally sort of sits together to push those products and services out to the customers, but to make money while you're doing it. So if an operation is really efficient, it'll be profitable. If it's highly inefficient, there are lots and lots of things going on within the business operation which can cause a cost issue. And also it can, if these leak out, sort of cause reputational damage as well, especially in service industry, because the thing about service industry is the customer is often there when the mistakes are being made. So that's the big issue.
Okay, thank you for that. So if we're going to have a look now, and of course, we work very closely with SMEs as a university. So if we're going to look at SMEs and reflecting upon your experience working with them, what are some of the common operational inefficiencies that businesses of this size generally face?
There's an old adage, people are busy working in the business and they don't get time to work on the business. And that is the biggest thing. And I would say to business owners, take time out, actually sign up to a course. And obviously this is to help promote Help to Grow. But the thing is, taking on board things that you learn on some of these courses, you can bring them into the business and really make an impact. So day-to-day operations, often that intensive, you're firefighting. We've all gone through the pandemic, and that's impacted businesses in many ways. So it's the time to work on the business, to take time out, which is precious, but needed. Sometimes there's the fear that stopping processes and introducing new ones are going to sort of slow the business down for a period. So if any of you have experienced, taking on board a new computer system and how clunky and awful that can be and painful, but when you get to the other side, you think, well, how do we live without this? And then sometimes, in fact, I found this quite often, that businesses don't often have a benchmark to work against. You sort of know what your competitors are up to, but you don't know how they're doing what they're doing, if they're being successful. You don't know the inner workings. And some membership bodies, like federations for different sectors, have tried to sort of look at benchmarking and do research with their membership base. But there really isn't always that comparison, that benchmark you can make compared to other people in your sector.
Yeah. And, I guess also, a lot of people are bombarded with a lot of surveys, etc. So, actually getting that data together often can be a challenge in itself as well.
It is.
So if we're going to look now, and of course, SMEs, they cover all different industries. So when we're looking at kind of business operations, is there a disparity between different industries and, the general level of operational efficiency? And what have you seen in general? As you work with different companies?
Yeah, there are some trends. I mean, I mentioned the service industries a moment ago. I mean, like, you know, if you're sitting in a dental surgery, you know, a spa, a restaurant, um, you know, or retail environment, you know, it's the presence of the customer. So if you're in manufacturing, for instance, and something goes wrong, then, you know, you can put that right behind the scenes, you know, sort of partway through the production process. So a perfect product goes out. But the biggest problem is that, you know, if you're in the service industry and the customer's sitting there while you're providing that service, you're quite exposed. And perception's reality. One thing that has come out of the pandemic, that people are very demanding. You know, they're not very understanding of businesses and what they've gone through, because they're not running a business. They don't have that appreciation. So they have very little understanding. They're not very patient. And they're not very forgiving. You know, people are still struggling with supply chains, and they're struggling with the timing of when they're getting things in that they need to get out to the customer. So I think certain businesses are more exposed than others, and it is all down to the presence of the customer in a lot of instances, and perception's reality. You've got things like Trustpilot, you've got Google reviews, you've got so many businesses, and especially when they're dealing with the public, you know, the public don't have the kind of appreciation that business to business customers do of the difficulties of running a business, and getting that supply chain, you know, back in good shape. So perception's reality, and the thing is that there's too much out there for them to go on, and actually make public a perceived bad experience. So I think, you know, you've got service industry, you've got retail, you've got manufacturing. They each have their problems, but when you're sat there with the customer in front of you, that's a bigger problem. And it does face some business to business customers. I've worked with a national refrigeration company that keeps all the fridges in all the major supermarkets on the go. And our local supermarket, the fridges literally just failed. And that retailer knows the hundreds of thousands they're missing that day in spoiled, you know, in spoiled food. And then that refrigeration company's got that massive issue because their engineers are tackling something in the presence of both the commercial customer and the, you know, the domestic customer. So sometimes it's a double-edged sword. And as I say, I think the pandemic has made customers far more demanding and far less forgiving.
Okay, so if we're looking now, I guess we try to look on the brighter side, and you know, some companies, of course, have struggled through the pandemic, but many are growing, which is, of course, a good sign. So for a company that's in the process of growing or scaling up for the first time, perhaps, either or, you know, how do you ensure that your operations evolve accordingly? Because, you know, some go from here and they go straight up. If the growth were a graph, you know, how do they make sure that the operations keep up, basically?
It's all down to capacity management. You can get the orders in place and have an escalation of orders, and you've got to fulfill them. So it's about getting enough people on board, and, you know, you can do that through temporary staff, subcontractors, consultants, associates. You know, certain businesses can expand and contract at will, depending on that business. But you've got three things. You've got financial or physical catch-ups. You can get orders in without the capacity to handle them. Then you've got to deal with that. You've got to make sure that you can bring in people fairly quickly and get those products and, you know, raw materials in fairly quickly to fulfill those orders. If you get the people in before you've got the orders, because you know you've got that growth plan, then you've got to think about finances, because there may be people who aren't fully occupied at that time. And you've got to make sure that you've got the people in place. That gives you financial pressure. So it's a balancing act. And if you know the orders are going to come in and you need to get people in place before that, so you're almost cash flow negative, then you need to be speaking to your banks, any financial sort of assistance you can get, and even look at some government initiatives where the more senior staff, the more sort of competent staff can be handling that growth in sort of like throughput and capacity. and then look at the apprentice schemes for lower level skills, where you can bring people into the business who can be productive very quickly, but at lower cost to the business. So it really is a balancing act. You know, do we get the orders in and then get the people in to try and to fulfill them? Do we get the people ready because they know the orders are going to bounce in? Then you've got financial pressure. But there are lots of ways out there you can ease that pressure and make it sort of a bit more balanced for the business to handle all this.
Okay, perfect. And so just, I guess, on that point, you know, and perhaps you mentioned, well, I think you mentioned some of these, you know, some of the main operational issues that SMEs face, but I guess, you know, on the back of that, are there any tools that perhaps, you know, companies can use as, for the operations they're growing? Any ones that come to mind?
Yeah, there are loads. There are loads and loads and loads. And just one thing about sort of help to grow. On some of the modules, we will throw loads of tools at you. The simple reason we don't know until we've got a cohort ready, you know, intimate sort of things about your business. And we don't know what kind of businesses we're going to get around the table. And we've got to sort of have a balance for all. But there are lots and lots of like different tools that we've got. We've got value streams. So for instance, businesses, it's a very good idea if you can, and it's very well recommended, is that you have a physical layout of the business and the processes within the business. So something like a value stream map allows you to sort of look at all the functions within the business and put into a visual what they do and the timeline within which they do it and how they interact and connect and depend on other functions within the business. So a value stream map lets you have a look at everything that's clunking away within the business, looks at the timing, the sequencing, the dependencies. And it probably sounds like a really, really difficult thing to put together, but there are lots of templates where you can literally just type in the names of those functions and actually type in those dependencies and type in the timelines of who's got this ready, when is it ready to hand to the next function within the business, how long does that business have it before it goes on to the next function. So getting things written down and using templates that give you a visual that lets you look at a picture of the business, for the want of a better description, is very, very productive and very informative. And it's a different way of looking at things that will really show you where some of the pinch points might be, where you might have bottlenecks, and where the communications flow might not be keeping up with what people need to function efficiently within the business operation. So we've got things like, you know, we've got, let's have a look. We've got value flows, we've got swim lanes as well. It's a similar thing to the value streams. It just looks on a linear basis, everything that particular function within the business does, and it's sequencing, and then the other functions. So you see them just in a cascading visual. And again, that helps you start connecting on that visual who needs to know what and by when, and what needs to be done by when, because there are dependencies. So we've got swim lane charts, we've got value streams, we've got value flows. We've also got another great tool, which is looking, if you have a product or service you want to look at a new market for, it's a great, and I've just forgot the name, it's escaped me for the moment and I will dig it out. But it's a great template because it lets you put your original products and services and a new customer, and it lets you draw in the resources of, as a business operation, what do we need to be doing and saying to be able to sell to this new market and expand and grow as a business. So it looks at everything you need to pull into place. And again, I do believe in writing stuff down and having visuals for a business, because they really do give you an awful lot of insight. Business model canvas.
Okay, thank you.
Just sitting there waiting to jump out. And that appears, you know, 2-3 times throughout the program, because it's something that sort of starts in marketing. And thanks, Ben. I did get a business model canvas, but that has been used by a lot of businesses during the pandemic to pivot very successfully. And as a result, it's given them more flexibility and insight into that growth, because they can map out how to get new customers and what sort of slightly tailored things they need to be saying to that new audience about existing products and services.
Okay, perfect. So if I'm a company that's mapping out my my value flow, what are some of the key metrics and touch points to consider then? Or if I'm if I'm doing this initial assessment, what points do most companies actually take a deep dive into the operation? They say, okay, this is important. It's important that I am getting data at this point or getting information at this point of the operational flow.
Yeah, well, it's like sort of, to oversimplify, it's like making a cup of tea. So someone wants a cup of tea. So what have you got to do? You've got to fill the kettle. You've got to put the kettle on. You've got to wait until the kettle's boiled. While the kettle's boiling, so you don't waste time, you've got your cup and saucer together and your dainty little spoon if you're being posh, or you've got your good old china mug, and then you've got your milk sugar and you've got your tea bags, and then obviously put the water in the cup or the mug. You know how long it takes to give you a decent cup of tea before you have the milk and sugar. So business needs to have all that in place. So the things that they will be looking at is when an order comes in, what things happen within our business to actually fulfill that order. And as you say, Richard, when do we need the pieces of information we need to make sure that we're doing the right thing at the right time and within the right timeline, so that cup of tea or that product or service as an output has been dealt with efficiently within the business. So, and some of it starts with strategy. What do we want to achieve as a business? How do we want people to perceive us? What messages are we putting out there? And you have to actually sort of, and this is where marketing and operations has to be very carefully in tune with each other and aligned, is strategic level. What are we in the business to do? Who with? How do we want to do it? And what sort of reputation or status within our marketplace do we want to achieve? Then the functionality of the business, what things need to happen within the business. So if it's retail, it's all about sort of, buying in, it's trend spotting, it's buying in stuff that is likely to sell, it's going to be popular. It's about merchandising it. It's about sort of, taking photographs of it. It's about sort of marketing it out or having a retail space. And it's about the whole operation, but it's also about the technology that drives that and the communications that drives that. And also the financial communications, looking at finances from a management perspective. What are they telling us about our business performance? So it's about financing, it's about clear communications and when those need to happen. And it's about all the component parts within the business that need to work seamlessly and timely in a timely nature with each other to push that product out or that service out profitably. And it will be profitable if it's done properly.
Okay, so just kind of sticking on this point. So you started to mention how the operations link up with other different parts of the business. I think you also mentioned this before about the alignment of the marketing and operational strategies. Perhaps we can just kind of look at that in a little bit more detail. So firstly, how important is it to have these two strategies linked? And, how do you go about it? Because they're different areas of the business.
At the very top level of the business, the senior management will have a clear idea, generally or hopefully, of where they want to go and how they want to grow. Or as a startup, how they want to start and progress within their first 2 to 3 years. They've got to make sure the business they're putting together and they're constructing is able to do that. So it's difficult to explain because there's so many different kinds of businesses, because you've got manufacturing, and if we're going to make a product, we need to have a good supply chain, we need to have everything coming in, but also we need to be aware of where we want to be in the marketplace. So at strategic level, it's all about what is the business future. At operational level, it's what do we need within the business to deliver on that. And actually, we need some truth and reality as well, because quite often there can be too much ambition and the business operation really isn't ready or big enough or well financed enough to actually fulfill that strategic, sort of those strategic intents. So you have to think at the very top level, what do we want to achieve? But what do we need to put together within the business operation itself? How do we need to build that business operation? What departments do we need? What functions are they going to serve? How are they going to deliver value? And there are some elements of a business that come at a cost that will never sort of make you money, but that will contribute to making money for you. There are parts of the business that will clearly make the money. So if you have a sales force, they're bringing in the orders. So you know they're actually bringing the revenue in. And there are parts of the business operation that are spending that revenue to get those products and services out. So it's about strategic intent. It's about building, designing and redesigning the way the business is put together to actually fulfill that, what functions. It's all about sequencing. So who needs to do what, or what performance needs to perform at what point, because there are other functions within the business relying on it. And financially, have we got the financial power to deliver this? And in terms of communications, what pieces of information are critical within the business to actually inform each function within the business? With the right information, it's complete, it's accurate, it's up to date, it's on time, and it helps that function do what it intends to do and then hand over to the next. So strategic intent, the design of the business operation itself, the financing, obviously the people and skill set, the communications, and the flow and dependencies. That's how I would probably list, starting from strategy right the way through to getting those products and services out. It's also important within the business operation to have good research, getting feedback from customers to make sure that you are always in tune with what customers need, and also in tune with the marketplace to see if there's anything changing, so you can innovate and make sure you always stay up to date. So, there's a lot to do, but businesses do this quite successfully. It goes back to basics. We need to build something that delivers on that strategy. We need to finance it, we need to resource it, and we need to look at the timing of what we do within that, and the timing of the information and the dependencies being fulfilled, so everyone has that smooth flow.
So just going back to something that you mentioned right at the very beginning, and this was to do with continuous improvement. So of course, operations change as a company grows and perhaps change its product line, et cetera, but in those operations, how does a company make sure that they are continuously improving and that they're becoming more streamlined and more efficient? How do they ensure this?
Just going back to ISO principles, to have a change management process. So if someone comes, first of all, to share it throughout the business. I used to work at a radio station in Wolverhampton, where the most important people that made the most sense ever was our odd job man and the cleaners, because they mopped up lots of information while they were mopping up, and they were very informative. So first off, make it everyone's responsibility and make it everyone's, I suppose, joy to do it. So if you have a change management system where someone can come up with a good idea, and that idea is genuinely investigated, and they have to obviously set out what improvement it might create. So I've got a good idea. This is what it is. They look into it, they investigate it, and they adopt it, or maybe they pause it or turn it down for whatever reason. So to have a change management system and have it documented, you can see everything that was suggested during that financial year or that operational year, and you can see which ones got adopted and what that sort of did to improve the business and deliver benefits. You've also got what we call an opportunity for improvement. So if something goes slightly wrong within the business, then we know every year our business is getting better and better. And we know why, because something's fallen over. So we had a couple of telephone calls and emails, a couple of meetings, we fixed it. But there's no core capture of that process. So if you have a non-conform opportunity for improvement process, something fell over. This is why it fell over. This is a corrective action, something we've done on a quick fix. And looking at the longer term, here's a preventive action. So these are things we're putting in place to either stop it happening again or to minimize it. That happens in every business, but it's never documented. People work on the fly quite naturally and because everyone's under pressure. But to have that documented and be able to reflect on that is very important for the business, because you can have a year-on-year view of bright ideas and things that got screwed up and how they got addressed and introduced and improved that business. And again, get it documented, because you can look back on stuff and changes and suggestions that were made that weren't adopted at the time. That doesn't mean they're gone forever. You can go back and say, hey, Richard said this a few months ago and we said no, but our world has changed slightly and it's worth revisiting. So it's getting things written down, which is an effort. But if you create a system where that is on the agenda for like a regular management meeting, and also create quality circles, people just looking at stuff and going, you know what, I know it's not my job, but I've been looking over there and I think they could do that slightly better. And then just coming up with that. So change management and non-conforms opportunity for improvement. So bright ideas and screw ups.
Thanks, Jane.
Very technical language this morning.
Yeah, thanks, Jane. I think we'll do one more question. So, and then we'll go into the Q&A, and then we'll mention a little bit more about how this links in with help to grow. So I guess just for the audience, just have a think about some questions you might want to ask, or if you have anything that you thought, actually, I didn't understand this, or, we can go back over it or whatever. So have a think about that. But in the meantime, Jane, my final question is, to do with technology and, looking through an operational lens, how can technology help or not? And how do I know as a company which technologies are right for me to support the efficiency in my operational processes?
The problem in some respects is there's too much out there and we don't know which bits will work. But I would possibly look at the most, maybe sort of prioritize, this is clunky, can we streamline it? And what's out there to streamline it? So it's about sort of tackling things just bit by bit instead of doing one big thing. It's the law of incremental gains. If you do quite a few small things and let technology take over with those small things, so like reminders and just very simple things. I mean, you can start with a spreadsheet and format it and do a RAG report. So if something's on date, it's sort of green. If something's in danger of being slightly late, it's amber. And if something's fallen over, that little box, that date sort of driven box comes up with a red flag. So red, amber, green, very simple RAG report. So you could sort of look at what you've got already and are you making best use of it with the technology you've got? Secondly, have you got pinch points? Have you got information flows that could be automated. So, you know, basically just putting auto reminders in that just work across a checklist, and those little sort of reminders jump out. So if it's something that can stop something being forgotten, can make something work faster, can automate something, can make things more accurate, so less falls out of bed. It's all these little things that tend to be niggles, but prioritize, you know, which things fall over the most often that we could find a piece of tech for that would avoid that. And then secondly, when you start going out to vendors, you want to sort of speak to them and their customers of a similar sector and size to see how it's worked out from them. So not just from the vendor, the tech vendor. So, well, you know, we've got this miracle cure, but their customers, you know, if they're willing, if they're happy for you to speak to their customers, then you've got a good vendor there, and you've got customers who will talk objectively and on a like-for-like basis as to how it's worked for them. So I think that's, you know, seek someone out, find out what needs fixing, prioritize it, seek someone out that has those solutions, and see if you can have open access to their customers, similar size, similar sector, to have, I suppose, a very pragmatic discussion with them, how it's worked out for them.
Okay, perfect. That's great advice. We do have one question. Do we have any examples of the operational or these value flows? Any templates that we can share?
I prepared earlier. I'm just going to find it. So if you see this is, here we go. This is very, very untechnical. Just talking about technology. But this is sort of looking at just the shape of a business. So this is a typical sort of stuff coming in, stuff going out. Now, this looks very factory based, but this is a typical value stream. So it's the order comes in, and then you look at sort of, you know, the different processes within the business that deals with that and actually creates the outputs. You look at the information flows, and you look at the lead time as well. So that's a very similar flow to what we use. We've got also, I think you might ask this. So that's why I was like waving things around. You've also got flows that help you look at waste. There's a great acronym that we use called Tim Woods. Different kinds of waste: transportation, inventory, motion, waiting, over-processing, overproduction, defects, and not using our strengths.
Can these be found online, some of these templates?
Yeah.
Yeah. Perhaps we can share them in the follow-up email with the recording towards the end of the week, Ben. So Jane and I will catch up, and I can share those along with the YouTube link once we upload this, so that, yeah, you can use them. Okay, perfect. So do we have any other questions, or? I'm
getting off easy today.
What we can do is,
I mean, I have some. I have another question as well. Sorry, so I'm quite ill at the moment, so I'm struggling to get my words out. But what you were mentioning there, I felt like a lot of this today was sort of about like everything in regards to operations, you know, efficiency. Now, one thing, I'm sort of very new to this. I'm quite a sort of a young business owner, so I'm in the process of obviously trying to establish sort of these different remits in the business. Now, one thing that, just to give you guys a bit of context, now I run a digital marketing agency. So in terms of those flows that you were talking about with all of those different processes in regards to sort of manufacturing, delivery, of course, I can relate to those in different senses. But it's what I'm sort of struggling a lot with at the moment is sort of that cost allocation against things, and really trying to sort of record things down to sort of the most granular format. Now, what you were saying earlier, Jane, in regards to having things automated, getting things a little bit quicker. Now, we use like a sort of like a project management system which integrates with our bank, which then obviously gives us the transactions. Now, can quickly sort of allocate quite simply what's going on. But then also we sort of have staff members as well who are sort of using credit cards. Like, say, for example, yesterday we had some of the team went down to visit a client and spent X amount on fuel, spent X amount on, say, a client meal. These things, would you even say, even down to that level of granularity, I should absolutely be recording to sort of measure full profitability?
Definitely. And also another thing, because you're a service industry, and it's, I would put in faff time. I always get anyone that's doing sort of creative or digital product, put in faff time. You know, sort of like clients that don't quite know what they want, or don't come back to you quickly enough, or don't sign things off. So yes, be absolutely granular about it, because unless you are, you won't know the true cost of what you're delivering. So you're doing absolutely the right thing, and especially as a newer business. And then what you can do is try, and, you know, lots of businesses, they're very 50-50 on this. Some will give their fees on their website and their social media platforms, some won't. So if you've got sort of like, you know, similar agencies operating in different areas, but sort of like similar cities or towns, and you can get hold of their rates, it gives you an idea of what the market acceptable pricing is for your products and services. But you're doing, you know, you're doing absolutely the right thing. And the reason why I say faff time as well is, when I'm working with a client, obviously I can't charge for my thinking time when I actually look at the terms of reference. You know, what do you want? Let's put this proposal together. So you've also got to allocate time within the business that will never sort of, you know, potentially make any money. You won't get every order. So you've got to capture that as well, because that is almost the cost of getting that first order with a client. And then my sales background, we used to look at sort of average sort of meetings we spent with clients, you know, getting them on board. But once you've got them, look after them, love them to pieces, keep in touch with them regularly, not on a sales point, but obviously on a welfare point, and make sure you keep them, because the lifetime value of a customer is really, really critical to a business. So to reassure you, doing absolutely the right things, be pedantic. You know, if they sneeze and you hand them, you know, a packet of tissues, how much did that cost? Whack it in. And also faff time. If you're charging, you know, 10 days for a project, half a day factored in isn't going to kill them, but that's the half a day faff time that you can actually earn money for. And I know clients who've gone up like 20 and 30,000 relative to their normal turnover, just by putting that little faff time slither into every project proposal.
No, I think that's a really interesting point that you state there, and I think it's a tough thing, particularly within our sector, because I think when you do start getting granular with the team, and you are sort of asking them to record it sort of every single minute, I think you get this kind of sort of difficult. It's like a strange attitude in the business. So I suppose, do you have any kind of recommendations on how to communicate that down to sort of the staff on the importance of why sort of tracking time and sort of these things is important?
Absolutely. So you know the true cost of delivering that project, and in doing that, you know, as a young business, you can learn very quickly, and you're future-proofing the business. If you leave things off the table financially, you might think you're doing better than you are, and then if you hit a little bit of a dry spell, you're in serious trouble. So it is about, you know, I'm not being nitpicking here. This is about future-proofing the business and just making sure that we've been profitable. It's not checking in on you, but it's just getting a realistic assessment of how many hours really go into these projects. And I do it with every ISO project I do, every meeting, all the paperwork, all the documentation, all the emails and queries and phone calls. I factor them all in. I have, you know, I have like a spreadsheet for every client. And then I know that some are more difficult to manage. And if I go back and do more work with them, I know I've got to work in a slightly different way to pull back some of that profitability.
Fantastic. I'll really appreciate your insight there. Thanks both, and I'll let other people have a go now.
Thank you. No, thank you for coming onto the microphone. We do have another one in the chat, and we'll have this as the last one before we move into the final part. But yeah, this is from Alex, and he says, you raised the key problem around benchmarking and understanding what competitors are doing operationally, and if it has been successful. How would this problem best be solved for a small business outside of entry interviews for new recruits from competitors?
Right, let's have a look. Yeah, yeah, yeah. If you take someone on from the competition, it's always very good. So I would do a mix of things. If you do a competitor analysis, you want to know what they're saying about themselves and also what their customers are saying about themselves. And you can pick up clues about their operational efficiency in some of the reviews and feedback. So they say, you know, it's a great product or great service, but it's really slow. You know that their timeliness isn't really on point. One thing I wouldn't do as a fairly new business is to underprice yourself so that you try and get some customers on the cheap, because that is a very short-term and dangerous strategy, and it'll kill the business very quickly. So when you are benchmarking competitors, you want to know what they're charging. You want to know if you can speak to any of their customers and what they are happy to pay. You want to sort of read their reviews and feedback and see if there are any patterns emerging. Took an awful long time, weren't impressed. Great service, but a bit too slow. See if you can pick up cues and clues from that and from their social media and their discussions and any impartial review sites, which doesn't work for every industry. And now we're allowed to go out and play, go to exhibitions, go to events, press the flesh, obviously carefully. We can't use that term anymore. It's not elbow bumping. And in an informal way, get some intelligence on them. I don't know whether that sort of helps.
Thank you. Perfect. There you go. Well, we will just move very quickly on to the final part, because I understand that this is quite a dense topic, but I feel like we've covered quite a lot of different points and ground. So just quickly moving on to the final section. I'm just going to share my screen again very quickly. I'm just going to mention a little bit how this links in with the Help to Grow management course, and Jane is one of our lovely facilitators for this for this section. Do you also do the finance one as well, Jane? Yes, I do. Yeah. Okay. Perfect. So, yeah, Jane's one of the facilitators for this course, along with other business growth professionals and also faculty from Salford Business School. So just to quickly mention a little bit about Help to Grow and what it is. So it's what is Help to Grow? So basically it's a consortium of leading business schools, and it's a government-led initiative which aims to support 30,000 SMEs in the next 3 years. It's been designed exclusively for senior business professionals and leaders. Basically, they've seen that these senior professionals are able to have a stronger influence throughout their company. And so it's basically been aimed at this sector of an SME. So these senior leaders, it goes across 12 weeks. It's not obviously 5 days a week. So it's actually based around 4 hours per week. So it's usually on like a Monday morning. And it's based around a real world approach. So really looking at real examples intertwined with some of the key principles. The idea is that it's constantly being linked back to examples, case studies. You also will be constantly linking it back to your own company as you're working through the different topics. And of course, because the government are really wanted to drive growth within the SME economy sector, it's 90% funded. So they are actually funding 90% of this. So as I mentioned, it's across 12 weeks. From week 3 onwards, you actually get a dedicated business mentor. We match up the business mentors depending on your sector. So you will have somebody that is experienced, usually from the Northwest, and they are also based, they have the knowledge within the sector. And what you do is 1 hour per week, and usually the mentor meetings are online. So you actually go through and you're putting together a growth plan for your business as you are going through the different thematic modules over the 12 weeks. It's been made to be as flexible as possible because we understand that you're busy. Everybody is nowadays. So actually 8 of these sessions are online. And then, of course, to make sure you're having those touch points and there is that kind of human connection that people actually are wanting now as we're coming through the other end of the pandemic. So you have these four interactive case study workshops, which are kind of slotted in between, and they actually at the business school in Salford, which is just around, what, half a mile outside of the centre of Manchester. As well as that, you have these peer-to-peer learning sets. So with these, you really kind of work with different people from different industries within your group, within your cohort. And you really kind of take a deep dive into your business and discuss how it works within your sector, exchange best practices and ideas. So just some of the key outcomes, as I mentioned, from week 3 onwards, you're putting together actually a business growth plan focused on your company. It also gives you a great chance. You may have 30 years experience as a general manager, or you may have 2 years experience as a director for operations, for example. The great thing is that perhaps if you're new into management, it gives you this good holistic perspective, or you're kind of new to a business, or perhaps you've got these 30 years experience, but actually things do change a lot. Marketing changes a lot, technology changes very quickly. So it's really good to make sure you're keeping yourself up to date. So it gives you this opportunity to take a step back out of your business for only 4 hours a week and kind of review these key areas to make some potentially vital changes. As I said, you can exchange best practices. So on this upcoming cohort that we have starting in September, we have literally everybody from an education, training, dentist, plastic manufacturing, manufacturing for medical devices. We have literally across all different sectors. Marketing, we have actually a legal firm on there as well. So yeah, it gives you the opportunity to boost innovation within your company. You can also address solutions that are unique to your business. So for example, if you're having some issues with your operations, it will give you this opportunity to take a deep dive and look to see how you might be able to create some solutions for those issues based on the discussions that you're having. And of course, as I mentioned at the beginning, the university is extremely well connected, not just through the business school. The business school is interlinked with all of the other schools as well: School of Health, Arts and Media, Sciences, Built Environment, Construction. We have it all at Salford, so it does give you that really good step into the university enterprise ecosystem. So these are the requirements that the government has basically said, okay, you need to comply with these in order to be able to take part in the course. So you need to have a presence in the Northwest, be an SME, of course, and that's between 5 and 249 employees, have been operational for at least a year, and be a senior leader within your company or a decision maker. So we are open to discussion with these. Of course, some of them are a bit more set in stone, but what defines a senior leader is, of course, open for discussion. And unfortunately, you can't be a charity. I personally disagree with it. Our Associate Dean for Enterprise, she disagrees with this as well, because charities actually do act like businesses as well. Just, of course, they're non-profits. But unfortunately, that is what the government has said, that in order to get that funding, you are unable to be a charity. So I'm going to go through these last slides quite quickly, but just to give you some idea of the industry sectors. So the top one here was construction, professional services sector. So that's anything to do with marketing companies, lawyers, accountants, anything providing those kind of services, those professional services. Also is very high up there. Education and training. So it can be kind of a training company. And then we have IT, and then some technical services, all the way down to transportation, arts and entertainment. So we've had literally across the four cohorts that we've delivered so far, actually we've had across lots of different sectors, and we've had on average 20 different companies participating on each cohort. Sometimes we've hit the maximum of 25, and some of them they've been around 18. So far for the month of September, we actually have 16 businesses signed up. So the course structure and content, as I said, I'm not going to go into detail, but you can see that it's real. It really takes a holistic kind of perspective, and you really look at all the different areas of your business. Of course, this one here, module number 10, the efficient operations, is kind of what we took a deep dive into this time. In our last thought leadership session, we looked more at actually putting together your growth plan. So these module 3, 6, 9, and 12, these are actually your case study workshops. And you can see here in module 12, the last one is actually, you will actually have your growth plan ready, and then it'll be the discussion. The final session will be actually looking at how you put that into motion as you finish the course. So I'm probably not going to go through this, but just to show you that, we've had all different types, small company, very niche, operational for 8 years, so relatively new. She got a lot out of it, and has put together a growth plan, which will help her company for years to come. And then just another example, that safe company, operation for 32 years, operation for 31 years with 32 employees, completely different sector, different kind of line of business. And yeah, what he got out of it as the managing director was more kind of the technology and the business culture. And so he said, he's been in business for a long time, but he actually got a lot out of it by taking a step back. So just to show you here some of the upcoming dates, as I said, we had 4 completed, or we've had 4 different dates completed over the course of the past year. Our next upcoming date is 5th of September, so just after summer. And then we will have one starting in January next year as well. And just to kind of go through the breakdown of the costs. So the original cost of the course is £7,500, but with the government funding of 90%, it brings it down to £750 per participant. And the government has just changed the rules, and they've opened it up a little more now, so that one person, if you're a company with 5 to 9 employees, one person can take part. And then if you have 2 employees, so if you have 10 to 249 employees, 2 people can actually take part. So that could be the managing director and the operational director, or marketing and sales. I don't know, however you want to team that up. It's really good often to put this together yourself, like as a pair. So if you want any more information, you can message me. I know I have sent you a few emails, so you know where to contact me if you want any more information. Also, there is a website that is for Help to Grow. Here you can actually see the breakdown of all of the dates for the September start. So you can actually go in the yellow part that cascades down. You can see the module. You can read a little bit more about the module and the date of that. And I've also mentioned there, like the case study workshop. So you can see which ones are actually face-to-face and which ones aren't. To actually graduate successfully from the course, you have to have attended 9 of the 12. We expect you to attend all of them, of course, but we understand that people have holidays, things come up in life in general. So of course, if you are unable to attend a few, all of the actual online ones are recorded. Also, all of the modules which are recorded. Of course, the case study workshops, which are in person, they aren't recorded. So if you are unable to attend, of course, you'll miss out on the opportunity. The only ones which aren't recorded are the peer-to-peer ones, because sometimes personal information about the business, confidential is the word I was looking for, confidential information about the business is shared. So yeah. Are there any questions about that, about the course, or perhaps any other questions that just quickly popped up into your head about what we were discussing at the start?
Well, I've said, Richard, I've just put a little post in there just to say that if anyone didn't get a chance to ask, if they just email you, then pass it on to me, and I'll sort of type up an answer with a couple of links and 1 or 2 visuals and pipe it back to them via you. So that's absolutely fine.
Yeah, so we just had one final question. Thank you, Jane. And we just had one final question, which is, yeah, £750 per person. So if you have 2 individuals, so if you're a company that qualifies for 2, yes, the cost would be £1,500. But I personally believe, and you can speak to some of the other companies that have participated across the UK, and they have got a lot out of it. So, and Jane, you'll be able to speak more to this than I will, but
yeah, we've had lots of businesses who found, you know, with the growth action plan, they found being able to take this time out and commit to it. It's been invaluable for their business. Absolutely invaluable. You know, even if you pick up 2 or 3 golden nuggets from it, it will be absolutely a game changer for your business, and has been for quite a lot that have been through, not just with Salford, but nationally. So we've got a very good bank now of case studies and testimonials about how this has worked out for businesses.
Okay, perfect. There you go. So thank you so much, Jane, for sharing your knowledge and your experience, and also for being a participant, being a facilitator on the Help to Grow program. Sorry, getting all my wires crossed now. Okay, well, we've hit 11 o'clock already, so I'll be sharing the recording afterwards. So feel free to share that with anybody within your company that may be interested in hearing more, or perhaps any clients that you have as a touch point. Also, it's interesting as well. So yeah, thank you very much for attending, and I hope you have a great day and enjoy the sun. At least it's sunny here. So
yes.
all right, see you later. Bye bye.
Okay then, bye everybody.